So I saw an email this morning, came across, and it was talking about Jesus Christ and Johnny Cash. And it was about a Lent series being held at St. Martin's Church. St. Martin's Church, I'm told, is the largest Episcopal church in the United States. It's at, I guess that's Woodway and Sage. My friend Paul Murphy and his beautiful wife Catherine were recently married there. It's beautiful, beautiful architecture. Looks like the campus at Yale University, and many prominent Houstonians go there. I just thought, well, that's just very fascinating. The Episcopal Church has always come across to me as a very intellectual approach to the Bible and to faith, and I thought, what an interesting cultural phenomenon, what an interesting educational phenomenon, if not ecumenical phenomenon, that they're incorporating Johnny Cash into their teachings. So I shot back an email and said, it actually, the woman who I think runs the day-to-day operations, the office manager, I said, hey, I would be interested in having Russ Levenson, the rector there, on the show to talk about what this means, faith in America today, and different ways we present it. And so it is to be. The rector of St. Martin's, the Reverend Dr. Russell J. Levenson, Jr. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Michael. How are you today?
I'm good. How do people generally refer to you? Reverend Levenson?
How about just Russell?
I like it. Let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Speak to me like I'm 5 years old, because I don't know as much as maybe I'd like to, and I'm sure many of our listeners don't as well. What does it mean to be the rector of St. Martin's Church?
It is chief pastor would be the best way to put it. For people who, I think you're Baptist, Michael, so I mean you call your
for us Christians, how would you describe it?
I am the chief pastor and preacher at St. Martin.
My Catholic friends do not find it funny when I make points about the fact that as a Christian I'd like them to explain Catholicism. But in any case, Episcopalians tend to have a better sense of humor on these things. You are incorporating, well, first of all, for people that don't know St. Martin's, or as I like to refer to it as the Rich People's Church at Sage and Woodway, the beautiful building. Were you here during the construction of that church?
I came right after the construction, and of course, it's a church made up of all kinds of, and the wealth that exists there is the wealth and a tremendous diversity of people. And there are
you don't mind if some rich folk want to come in.
I don't mind if anybody wants to come.
So you didn't have to call and do building foundation funds and all that stuff. You didn't have to do all that. You just get to swoop in and enjoy this incredible campus.
When I came in 2007 and I was being interviewed, I knew my predecessor very well and had great admiration for him, Larry Gibson, who really built up the church. One of my questions was, is all of that paid off? and the answer was yes. Fortunately, I guess, we've just finished up another capital campaign, and we're about to build two new facilities, a new youth facility and a new facility we're going to call the Hope and Healing Center, which will be a center for educating people about mind, body, emotion, mental wellness overall.
Yeah, we don't want any mental illness if we can help it.
No, we don't, although that keeps me at work. But we do. We just finished about a $19 million campaign, and we'll start breaking ground on all that in the next few months.
Well, let's talk about your program that intrigued me as it came across my desk. First of all, for someone who's not aware of what you refer to as Lent, explain to people what that is.
Lent is it's a long time, of course, early tradition of the church, following the 40 days of Jesus's 40 days in the wilderness. It comes from the word Lenz, L-E-N-Z, which is a German word which actually meant spring, and it refers to those 40 days leading up to Easter, which of course usually lands right in the middle or right toward the end of spring. And it's a day that Christians across denominational lines try to deepen their walk and relationship with Jesus Christ through spiritual discipline, prayer, fasting, study, those kinds of things. So we are in the Lenten season, and the goal is really, at least in my work, is try to help people have a deeper relationship with our Lord and with one another.
Russell, can you stay with me for a moment?
Sure.
I want to take a brief break because I want to ask you some things, and I don't want to have to interrupt you, about sort of non-traditional teachings in the modern church, and why it is you incorporate a Johnny Cash, or I'm looking at your series, Alison Krauss and Emmylou Harris and the King, Elvis Presley, and some bluegrass music, and why exactly you do that, what the purpose is, and ways in which the church is having to go out and find or meet people, maybe, where they are, and how you still stay true to your mission, because I know that is a struggle that people have today. We will talk to the rector of St. Martin's Church about how they're incorporating Johnny Cash into their Lenten teachings. Coming up.
You're listening to The Michael Berry Show. The Michael Berry Show. Real Texas, real talk.
Everybody knows where you go.
Reverend Dr. Russell J. Levenson Jr. is the rector at St. Martin's Church at Woodway and Sage. Beautiful, beautiful church. Many friends go there. My friend Paul Murphy was recently wed there. Of course, President Bush went there, may still, for years. And something came across my desk this morning entitled Wednesdays in Lent for Adults. And the rector there, the reverend there, it noted, was teaching a course entitled The Jesus of Bluegrass and Country. The actual headline that caught my eye was Jesus and Johnny Cash. And I thought, it's interesting. There's a trend I think people would like to hear more about. And if people wouldn't, I know I would. Russ Levenson, the genesis of a series like this, which obviously a little non-traditional. Russ, we're cutting up. Hold on just a moment. You still there? Well, there you go. Let's see. Russ, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, much better connection. The genesis of a series
Right.
on a little non-traditional, the Jesus of Bluegrass and Country, and obviously maybe a Johnny Cash series.
Sure. I think most people don't live day-to-day in the life of the church like I do. They may live day-to-day in the life of their faith, but most people live with their radios, their TVs, and their cell phones, and the Internet. And so I often try to make some connection between where people are living and the faith that I hope that we're all drawn to. And I'm a big fan of probably more bluegrass than country, though I like both of them. And I think that the four people I've chosen to kind of look at, not only with their lives, but also with their music, have stories to tell. And, some of the stories are not all that good, and some of them are tough to hear. And particularly, as I'm talking about Johnny Cash tonight, his own journey was up and down. So he's somebody I'm going to look at. Of course, he had a profound personal conversion to Christianity on his own, and lived most of his adult life as a Christian. Remember, he wrote a Christian novel called The Man in White.
Right.
And music was true, but it was also identifying with people who were in deep pain, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Is just his.
Well, and he has a beautiful piece on YouTube entitled "Redemption Johnny Cash" or "Johnny Cash Redemption." That if you watch it is just extremely powerful. He has this ability to emote, this ability to just open himself up and pour out about his faith. I received an email from another Episcopal minister here in town, and he says, I'm also an Episcopal minister here in Houston, and I often refer to Johnny Cash in classes that I teach or Bible studies that I lead. And he says, regarding you and Reverend Russ Levenson, speaking about Johnny Cash, I would recommend that you check out the website for Mockingbird Ministries, see what it has to say about Johnny Cash and the Christian faith. Just type Johnny Cash into the search box on the right side of the page, and you'll get a lot of posts, what Johnny's life and his relationship with Jesus Christ have to say about the Christian faith and about the nature of grace, grace being something that is unique to the Christian faith alone, are quite profound. He says, and he points to this blog, and he says a large number of the folks that post on it are either Episcopalian or Anglicans.
Yeah, and in fact, Mockingbird, I'm familiar with Mockingbird, and they do a lot of this work of trying to connect culture with our faith. So if you do go, that was a nice advertisement he gave for himself there, but if you go to Mockingbird, it really does have a lot of good connection, not just between Cash, but literature, television, media, music. It's a good place to visit.
I guess the question that's going to arise out of things like this, and it's something that I'm sure you struggle with, is, are we glamorizing pop culture when the church should be the alternative to the secular church, which would be pop music and movies? Are we then in some way endorsing them through some form of relativism?
Yeah, great question. And I think not if we're lifting up the gospel in the midst of it. And for instance, last week when I talked about Elvis, which I did, the title of that little talk was Elvis's Way, and of course one of his famous songs, My Way, which borrowed from other singers, but My Way, and I said Elvis's Way or God's Way, and I kind of talked about the queer struggle he had throughout his life to kind of live between two worlds, and obviously I don't think we would want to follow Elvis's way. We don't know what happened at the very end, but we wouldn't want to take the journey that he did. And I think, although I think Johnny Cash, you would want to follow that journey. He was deeply addicted to drugs and alcohol, and then turned his life over to our Lord and found his way to recovery and redemption through, I think, not only his relationship with Christ, but his love and friendship with June Carter Cash. And then the last two talks I'm doing on Alison Krauss and Emmylou Harris really focus mainly on their music, which is mostly about drawing into that personal relationship with Christ. This Sunday, I'm again trying to make that connection. I'm going to preach on a little bit. I'm sure he's been preached about in other places in town, Charlie Sheen. And I'm going to say, what would Jesus say to Charlie Sheen right now? And I think he would probably say, "You need me. you need to find a relationship with me in order to restore your life to what I created it for." And I think anybody who watches the news or reads the newspaper can identify with the crisis that is Charlie Sheen. The reality is that many of us personally are dealing with those kinds of crises in our life, and we need to continue to hear Jesus' invitation to come and be in relationship with him to restore us to wholeness and to salvation and to peace, which is what we really want after all.
Let me challenge a theory or posit a theory, and you can tell me whether you agree with it. One of the things that Charlie Sheen has said over the last couple of weeks that I think people found fascinating, because there is a kernel of truth, or we fear there's a kernel of truth, whether it's that he's winning and you're losing, and he's on top and you're not. He's beautiful and you're not. He's with beautiful people and you're not. He has tiger blood and you don't. He lives in a rarefied world. He doesn't have the worries you do. He's a cut above and you're not. It seems to me that in the modern era, perhaps more than, at least in my lifetime, the celebration of celebrity has been elevated to such an extent that the average person means nothing. And the goal of so many people,
right,
particularly young people, is it doesn't matter that I'm flipping burgers or not working or living with my parents and I'm 30. I've got an application in to be on American Idol or a 15-minute reality show. And I just wonder to what extent this says to me we've got to draw upon the celebrity figures in order to get people to still pay attention. As a minister to souls, do you see it being harder to say to the average person, the member of your church, the daily Christian, the child of God, in 2011, do you find it harder to connect in these worlds where there is such, in what we would call the secular world, there are so many false idols out there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the idols, frankly, I think the idols have just changed. At the bottom of Mount Sinai, it was a big golden calf, and the example I'm using Sunday is when Jesus encounters that woman at the well, who's been married 5 times and living with her 6th relationship, and she thought that's where she was going to find satisfaction, and Jesus basically says no, and Moses says the same thing. I think the idols have just changed, but I completely agree with you. I think the falsity of calling reality TV, even calling it reality, is the furthest thing from the reality you and I live on a day-to-day basis. And I think it is somewhat a tremendous cultural challenge to get across to people that that's not only the way most people don't live, but that's also not the way you should live.
Right. It's a hollow world in front of a camera, and then the crash that comes afterwards. Do you find, I watched yesterday, our guest is Russ Levenson, the rector at St. Martin's Episcopal Church. Do you find, I watched yesterday the 2009 Sony shareholders meeting, or Sony, one of their major meetings, and this thing, it went viral. You may have seen it. It was a 5-minute video on the changes in our world, and they showed that radio took 38 years to get 50 million audience, and TV took 20, and Facebook took 2, and how our lives have changed, and how 4 of the top 10 jobs in America today didn't exist, some 10 years ago, and what you learn in your first year of college is useless by the time you're in your 3rd year, and with a change in information and how transformative that is to the way we live our lives, that the concept was we can't keep up with the transformations that are occurring daily, and yet you're in a timeless, faith is timeless, the message is timeless. Are you finding that it is harder to connect? Are you finding that you have to be more creative now more than ever?
No, I personally I'm not, and some people who are I'm almost 50, so some people who are younger than me may disagree, and I think where I would agree with you, where I would not want to go. I know that many people have incorporated lots of. I do in tonight's teaching. I'll use video clips and music and things like that. But I know we've got pastors now who are allowing you to Twitter them during their sermon. I think that just feeds our tendency to want to be continually entertained and distracted, when I think the central message is that wonderful verse from our scripture that says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The message is timeless. People who by and large try to find wholeness in anything but, I believe, as a minister of the gospel, a relationship with Jesus Christ, a loving relationship with God and one another. People who kind of go for it, trying to find it in those places, are ultimately going to feel empty and lost. And I
like the verse, "Be still and know that I am God."
Psalm 46:10, one of my favorites. Because
today more than ever, in today's world, I find that I have to. When I got home last night and played with my son, and then I sat out on the back porch with my wife, and we sat for an hour and did nothing. And I thought, wow, I need to do this more often. We get so busy being busy. Now, how comforting, how peaceful to do that. Tweeting the pastor in the middle of the sermon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I don't Facebook, I don't MySpace, I don't do a lot of that stuff. But I know people who do, and Carl Jung, who was kind of an off-the-wall psychiatrist, but certainly knew spirituality. He used to say, "Hurry is not of the devil; hurry is the devil." Mm. And I think that's one of the things that we've kind of slipped into. And again, going full circle for your interview, and that's what Lent is about. It's about putting on the brakes and trying to, through the spiritual disciplines, find Jesus Christ again. And more than that, letting you realize He's seeking after you. That if you just let go, He'll grab a hold of you.
What did you give up for Lent?
I'm an old schooler, which means I kind of believe if you're giving something up for Lent, you probably shouldn't be doing it to begin with. So what I try to do is be more intentional in my own spiritual discipline. So,
well, wait a minute. That means you don't give anything up.
Well, I'm giving up more time. I'm giving up more time to focus on.
If you were going to give up a vice, what is the vice that you would give up? What is something? What is an impurity in your life that you go, you know what? It's a guilty indulgence. Maybe it's a television show. Maybe it's a cigar. Maybe it's one too many glasses of wine. Maybe it's too much rich, buttery food.
Gosh, at my age, I've given up most of those things already. But I would probably give up, if I could, which may say something in and of itself, probably give up email.
Wow. That's your guilty indulgence?
Not a guilty indulgence, but it does bring you a sense of satisfaction to feel like, wow, I really accomplished something by returning 50, 60, 70, 80 emails.
Isn't that sad? Before I go to sleep every night, I read through the remainder of almost 1,000 emails, and I get up in the morning and there are 200 waiting, and I feel a sense of accomplishment when I knock that down to, none of them remaining. And you think to yourself, how much of that was really necessary?
Yeah.
Am I really a better person? How much of that communication was because it's so quick and easy?
Yeah.
Makes you think. Russ Levenson, the rector at St. Martin's Episcopal Church. Appreciate you sharing with us.
Thank you, Michael.
All right.